Hey, what's good, everybody? I'd like to welcome you guys back to the Boombox Guru channel. I'm your host, LB. So, today's video, I got another album review. I'm going to be talking about one of my favorite heavy metal albums by one of my favorite heavy metal bands of all time. So, today, I'm going to be reviewing Under the Blade by Twisted Sister. So, this is Twisted Sister's debut album. It was originally released in 1982 on a small European punk label called Secret Records. Not a lot of people knew about this label, but if you watched, and I recommend that you watch the We Are Twisted Effin' Sister documentary, you will learn that Twisted Sister, they spent 10 years grinding, trying to get signed to a label. I mean, they were a New York City band. They spent a lot of time working the bar circuit. They end up elevating to, selling out larger venues, but they could not get a record deal in America. One of the American labels, Atlantic Records, hated the band so much that they told their employees that if anybody mentioned the name Twisted Sister, that they would be fired. That's how bad it was. But they eventually ended up getting signed to this small punk label over in Europe. So they had to go all the way over to Europe to record this record. Pete Way, the late Pete Way, who he was the bassist for the band UFO, he actually helped produce this album with the band members, mainly Mark Mendoza and D. Snider. But yeah, this album was 10 years in the making. Honestly, it was 10 years in the making. They went through a lot of obstacles to finally get to this point. Now, I want to say that this is a different Twisted Sister. This isn't the Twisted Sister that probably most people know. The Stay Hungry era. We're not gonna take it. I want to rock. This is different. This is not the same band that became mainstays on MTV in the mid '80s, or they had chart topping hits that was right up there with Michael Jackson and Prince. No, this is a angry, pissed off band. And if you watch that documentary, you'll understand why the music comes off in that way. But there's a lot of rawness on this record. Very gritty, very aggressive. I would say that this is Twisted Sister's heaviest album in their discography. And it's one of my favorites. I think a lot of people consider this to be one of their favorites. I don't know too many people personally that were introduced to Twisted Sister through this record. Most people that I know that were of age and were around during this era, their introduction to Twisted Sister was either You Can't Stop Rock and Roll or Stay Hungry. And then they went back and discovered this record. But this version that I have right here, this is a 2011 reissue that was released by Armory Records. And basically what it does is it brings back the original mix of the record, and it also comes with a few bonus tracks from I think the Rough Cuts EP that the band released, self-released back in 1980, as well as a live track. Uh, the reason why I wanted to mention this is because there's also another version of this album that Atlantic Records, after the band signed to the label and blew up, they released a version of this album that was remixed. And honestly, I personally don't care for that version. I might buy it one day just for collection purposes, but they really kind of there's no kinda to it. They overproduced the record. They took away a lot of that rawness and grittiness, and it just doesn't sound as good as this version. So if you want to listen to this album, I highly recommend you find this version. And I also want to mention that, in doing, brushing up on my research on this album, a lot of platforms that I was researching that, they like to categorize Under the Blade under glam metal. Like the three categories I saw it under would be heavy metal, hard rock, and glam metal. I agree with heavy metal and hard rock. I don't necessarily agree with glam metal, and that's not because I have an issue with glam metal. I actually listen to that. I actually do listen to that genre, but this is not a glam album. There's nothing glammy about this record. This is a balls to wall, aggressive, raw, in your face heavy metal record. If anything, I would categorize it as being heavy metal, hard rock, and speed metal, because there's a lot of fast tracks on this record. I mean, the musicianship on here is just, it's great, but it's also raw. I mean, there's nothing really technical, but it's good. It's good music. It's good music. I mean, D Snider's vocals, I think this is probably his most aggressive performance on a record. The Eddie Ojeda, JJ French, their guitar work is amazing. Not technical, but you don't have to be technical. It's just the whole feeling and emotion that they put forth in those riffs and in those solos. It's just the feeling that you get from it. That's what matters. They get their point across. Mark Mendoza as a bassist, man, his bass style is very raw, very dirty, very gritty, slightly groovy. And then AJ Pero, R.I.P. to the late great AJ Pero. His drumming on here, he really took the band to the next level. Because AJ actually joined the band, I think maybe only a couple of months before they were supposed to fly over to Europe and record the album. Twisted Sister actually had a different drummer prior to AJ, but I feel like he was a huge contributor to them really finding their sound and them really having their breakthrough, because he was a heavy metal drummer. He's just pounding so hard on those drums. He just really brought that sound to the next level. He took a lot of these songs on here were songs that the band recorded during their unsigned years, their club years, and he just really brought it more heavier. He just brought it more heavier to that more heavy metal sound. But without further ado, man, let's get into this track list, and I'm gonna try to run through this track list a little quickly. So the first song on the album, What You Don't Know Sure Can't Hurt You. This is the first track. This is what kicks off the record. It's a perfect album opener. I think it's one of the best album openers ever, especially with the intro, those really cool riffs, and then you hear D Snider say, good evening, welcome to our show. He's basically welcoming the listener to what they're in for. And then as soon as everything comes in like that, the drums come in, that breakneck speed, the heavy riffs, the very Sabbathy riffs that come in here, and then that dirty raw bass from Mark Mendoza, and D Snider's just aggressive approach to his vocal style on here. It's you just got a really ticked off band here, like a really tough New York City metal band on this record, man. Just definitely a speed metal classic in my opinion. And I believe, if I'm correct, they used to open up their shows with this song. I think almost every show, if not all shows that the band did, they will open up with this track. And I think they did that up until they officially decided to stop touring and so forth, man. But it's a great opener because with that introduction of D, like welcoming you to Twisted Sister, to the world of Twisted Sister, especially new listeners. So next track is Bad Boys of Rock and Roll. Bad Boys of Rock and Roll. Now a lot of people don't typically like that song. Some people kind of look at it as somewhat mediocre. I actually like it. I actually enjoy the song. It is different. It is a bit of an oddity because it's sandwiched between two heavy tracks. The opening track and then the next track after this. Those songs are heavy, but this one is more of a kind of a mid-tempo track. It has more of a commercial appeal to it. It's more melodic. It's very catchy, but I like the song. It definitely can get stuck in your head. My favorite part is the chorus where D Snider says, "How bad can a bad boy be when he sets you free?" A lot of great guitar work on here. Very solid solos. But I think that this was intended to be like that radio track, in my opinion. I don't know if it was ever released as a single. I don't see anywhere on here, on Wikipedia at least, where it says that it came out as a single. But it does have that commercial appeal. To me, this is the only track on the album that I would maybe classify as being kind of in that glam metal territory. But then again, this is 1982. This is before that whole movement even really kicked off. But it does have a lot of catchiness. It does have a lot of that melodic kind of pop sensibilities, in the track that, it would appease fans. It is a song that I could hear being played on the radio. But I like it. I think it's cool. But, I will admit it is a bit of an oddity on this record. It does sound kind of out of place compared to how the other tracks come across. But let's see here. Next song, number 3, is Run For Your Life. So this track right here, it brings back that heavy and aggressive momentum. This is another speed metal fest right here. The song starts off a bit slow in the beginning, a little bit of a kind of eerie, somewhat haunting introduction. D Snider sings in his clean vocals. But then that riff just comes in, and then the drums, everything else just comes in, and then boom, it's just a breakneck speed metal track. I'm not sure what this song is about. You know, reading the lyrics, it kind of sounds like this song is about someone that might have been mistreated or done wrong in a relationship, and now they're like kind of seeking revenge. But even though this is a very heavy song, it's also kind of catchy. You know, the chorus, I really like the chorus, man. The chorus can get stuck in your head, especially the part where D. Snider's like, "You better run for your life." I mean, of course, I can't do it as good as D. Snider, but that chorus gets stuck in your head, man. And the riffs, the Black Sabbathy riffs, man. I mean, you can tell that Black Sabbath was a huge influence on this band because those riffs got so much of a punch to them, and I just really, that's one of my highlights of the song for me is the riffs. The riffs are just crazy, man. They really do they really do their job on that. But another great song, and track number 4, Sin After Sin, keeping that aggressive and speedy momentum on here. Sin After Sin is a heavy track, but it's also one of the more positive songs on here. Well, I think all the songs are pretty positive, actually, but I don't want to classify Sin After Sin as like a Christian metal song or whatever, but it has a very good message about what happens if you don't turn away from your wicked ways. Like you're doomed to go to hell and so forth. And a lot of Christian metal bands and Christian rock bands have actually covered this song. One band I know in particular called Ultimatum that I used to listen to quite a bit. They did a cover of it on a covers album they did. They did a more thrashier version of it, but they still knocked it out. But really good song, very positive message. And I think it really shows the type of band that Twisted Sister was. You know, they were a heavy band, but they also managed to kind of like, well, maybe not sneak in, but they also applied a very positive kind of thing to their a positive aspect to their music as well. You know, they weren't like one of these loom and goom kind of metal bands. You know, they were heavy and aggressive on here, but they still managed to get out this positive message on here. But I really like the riff. I think the riff on here is probably one of my favorite Twisted Sister riffs, and I like D. Snider's passionate and powerful singing on this track as well, man. It's a really good song. One of my favorites. I think a fan favorite for a lot of people. I think this was a song that really stayed in their set list up until they decided, you know, to call it quits. Then we got Shoot 'Em Down. Shoot 'Em Down is another one of my favorites of all time from Twisted Sister. If I had a list of my like top Twisted Sister songs, Shoot 'Em Down would probably be in the top 5 somewhere. And this is actually an older song, and I forgot to mention that What You Don't Know is actually an older song too. Those are songs that were carried over from their club days. But Shoot 'Em Down, this song, I like this version better. The Under the Blade version, I think it's very much superior to the Rough Cuts version or the earlier versions they did in the clubs. This is just more of like a heavy hard rocker, in my opinion. You know, AJ Pero, his drumming style on here just took this song to a more heavier level. This is a bit of more of a mid-paced track, but somewhat melodic, but it's catchy too. It's catchy too. I mean, anytime I listen to this song, I can't help but just headbang to it. And the verses, the lyrics, the chorus, everything is just so catchy, man. Like this is a song that you could sing every word to. It would be easy just to learn every word to this song and just sing along to the whole thing when you hear it, man. And amazing guitar solos from JJ French and Eddie Ojeda. Mark Mendoza, his bass on here is slightly groovy on here. He would enhance that more on the next album, but you get a taste of that kind of grooviness that Mark Mendoza has as a bassist on here, man. But just a very catchy song, and one that I highly enjoy. Next song, and the next song right here, this is probably everybody's favorite Twisted Sister song. This is Destroyer. Destroyer is, this is the slowest song on the album, but so many Twisted Sister fans. I don't think I've met any Twisted Sister fan that didn't like Destroyer. This is the biggest highlight of the record. It's the slowest song on here, but it's the heaviest one, man. I mean, those riffs, oh man, you could tell that they were probably listening to Black Sabbath when they did this song, because those riffs sound so Tony Iommi, and I don't mean like they're ripping them off. I'm just saying that the influence, like that heaviness You know, anybody that listens to Black Sabbath, like the early stuff, you know, from the first album, the second album, that just slow, doomy approach, that's what's on this track, man. Those riffs are just so heavy. D comes with a very powerful, slightly sinister singing style on here. I mean, the chorus, destroyer, destroyer, you know what I'm saying? Destroyer coming to your town and so forth. I mean, it's, oh man, that song belongs in a movie. That song belongs in an action scene in a freaking movie, bro. That's just how good it is. And then Mark Mendoza, at the end of the song, I think one of the biggest highlights is when he comes in with his more aggressive part and he goes, destroyer. Like how many people have like rewind the song and tried to do that? I mean, that's one of the biggest highlights of that track is when Mark Mendoza comes in and does that. He was always the one that did kind of the more aggressive kind of parts like that on Twisted Sister songs, man. But he did a great job, man. But that chorus, man, destroyer, again, heavy, dark song, but freaking catchy, man. Like D. Snider is such a genius when it comes to songwriting. He knows how to make anthems. He knows how to make anthems, man. But just a great track, man. I would say the best song on the record, and that's saying a lot because there's a lot of good tracks on here. So let's see, next song, track number 7, the title track, Under the Blade, man. This is another one of my favorites. Another kind of dark, heavy song, but this is like such a speed metal classic right here, man. Like the opening part where D is singing, he's setting you up, and you hear that riff, that riff coming in, and then that and then boom, AJ Perro comes in on the drums, and it kicks off in that speed metal fest. I think this song Under the Blade has one of D. Snider's most aggressive singing styles on here, man, because he does a lot of like harsh shrieking and yells on this song. He kind of does it a little bit throughout the whole record, but this song he does it the most. There's like several times throughout the freaking song where he does those and stuff like that, like very harsh. And when I say harsh, I don't mean like metalcore or anything like that. It just for that time, I think it was I think it was very aggressive, but I enjoy it so much. And an interesting thing, here's a fun fact about the title track Under the Blade. That song actually ended up on the PMRC's Filthy 15. Of course, the PMRC went and formed to probably like 2 years later, maybe a year or two later. But Tipper Gore, she was claiming that Under the Blade was about S&M, and that's why she put the song on that list. It's really funny. It's kind of funny, but that is not what the song is about. The song this is actually an older song too. I think the band will actually perform this during their club days, if I'm correct. Yeah, I think this was an older song. Yeah, it was on the Rough Cuts EP. But anyway, D. Snider wrote this song about Eddie Ojeda, lead guitarist Eddie Ojeda. Eddie Ojeda had to have throat surgery some around the time when they did the song. He had polyps that had developed on his vocal cords, because Eddie Ojeda is a singer too, but they were causing his voice to become really raspy. So he went to the doctor and he found out that's what was causing it, and he had to have throat surgery. And D. Snider wrote this song about Eddie Ojeda's throat surgery, hence the title Under the Blade, because him having surgery, he was going to have to go under the blade. But that's what this song is really about. It had nothing to do with S&M. And of course, D. Snider in 1985 during those PMRC hearings were him, Frank Zappa, and John Denver, and I think a few other people might have went there to speak. D. Snider families went there and read that note saying that's what the song was about, and that they thought that it was about S&M because that's what they wanted to see in that song. But it was really about throat surgery. But a great track nonetheless, one of my favorites on the record. So then we get to the next track, which is number 8, Tear It Loose. This is another favorite of mine. Now this track, you might always call this a thrash metal song, honestly, man, because it has that freaking tempo, man. Tear It Loose has that tempo. So here's an interesting thing about this song. It has a bit of a Motorhead kind of vibe to it. But here's the thing. Fast Eddie Clarke actually makes a guest appearance on that song. He does a guitar solo on Tear It Loose. And Yeah, I'm pretty sure he was still in Motorhead at the time. He probably ended up leaving Motorhead probably not long after that. Cause I think 82, yeah, 82 was the year he left Motorhead. And I think the last album he did with them was Iron Fist, which came out that year. But yeah, Fast Eddie Clarke, while he was still in Motorhead, he made a guest appearance. He did a killer like guitar solo on there. Amazing guitar solo. You'll know it when you hear it. But yeah, R.I.P. to Fast Eddie Clarke. R.I.P. to Lemmy, Phil the Filthy Animal Taylor, the whole classic lineup, and other members of Motorhead that have since passed on. But yeah, he did a killer solo on there. But this is one of my favorites. I mean, Tear It Loose. Listen to that song, that tempo. That is essentially thrash metal. That was like thrash metal before it really took off. I mean, this was 1982, so thrash was still, I guess, in its early formative years. So it hadn't really quite got its own identity. It was probably still being lumped into speed metal, but that's essentially a thrash metal track, and it's one of the best songs on this record, and one of my favorites from Twisted Sister, man. Just a straight up like thrash, just a thrash classic, honestly, man. Like, I think more people need to talk about that song being sort of like a proto thrash song, being thrash before it was really thrash. But just a great track. And then we get to the last track, number 9, which is called Day of the Rocker. Now, Day of the Rocker, this hasn't always been one of my favorite songs on the record, but I have grown to really appreciate it more recently. This is a slow number, not as slow as Destroyer, and definitely not as heavy. Day of the Rocker is a bluesy number. It's a slow bluesy number. It kind of harkens back, in my opinion, to the club days when Twisted Sister was playing in the biker bars and so forth, because that's the whole imagery I get whenever I listen to this song. I just imagine the band back then playing in this maybe kind of hole in the wall biker bar, secondhand smoke, cloud of secondhand smoke everywhere, them on stage probably sweating, bikers probably at the tables, at the bars with the beer and everything like that. That's the whole imagery, that's the whole atmosphere I get whenever I listen to that song. But I like it, man. It's a really cool bluesy number. It's got a bit of an old school rock and roll feel to it. It's got some really good bluesy solos in it as well, man. And I mean, Dee Snider fits right in. I think Dee Snider is one of the greatest singers in music, man. Like he can go, his ranges can go from like daggum power metal style to hard rock to even bluesy. I mean, he's definitely a rock singer, man, and it really shows on Day of the Rocker. So I really like this song a lot more than I used to. So that right there ends the album part of it. Now we get to the bonus tracks. So the bonus tracks, and I'm gonna try to run through this a little bit quickly. So the first few bonus tracks are actually the Rough Cuts EP. The Rough Cuts EP was a EP that Twisted Sister self-financed, and I think they probably had help from like a lot of the club owners at the clubs they played at. I think they chipped in and helped the band out. It was an EP that they put out, that they self-released in 1980. I think it was on their own label. I don't know if it was like an actual label, but it was called Twisted Sister Records, I believe. But they put that EP out, and it has like a few early versions of some of the songs that appear on Under the Blade. What You Don't Know is on here. Shoot 'Em Down, Under the Blade, and Leader of the Pack. And so these songs are pretty cool. They're pretty solid tracks. Most of these songs also appeared on the Club Days Volume 1 compilation that came out in the late 90s. I like them, but I personally prefer the Under the Blade versions. See, these versions on the Rough Cut version, they're good songs, but they just don't have that heaviness to them, man. These are more kind of punky hard rockers at this point on the Rough Cuts versions, at least. That's just the vibe I get from it, is like kind of punky hard rock in some ways, man. It don't really have that meat and potatoes like the versions on Under the Blade has. And of course, AJ Pero wasn't in the band at this point. They had another drummer, which let me see if I can look him up right quick. Let me see. I don't know which one. Let's see here. Well, there's two different drummers, Joey Brighton and Tony Petrie. I think these are the drummers that played on these versions, actually. But yeah, they're solid songs. It's a good glimpse into the early Twisted Sister sound, so you can get a sense of how the band grew from the early days to where they got to at this point. But yeah, I just like the Under the Blade versions a lot more better. And then you have the song Leader of the Pack. Leader of the Pack was actually like a novelty song that the band would perform during their club days. It's a cover song too. I forget the name of the band. I think the band's called Shangri-La, something like that. Something of that nature. They were like a kind of like a 60s kind of pop rock kind of band, I believe. I think they were the ones that made that song. And of course, that song Leader of the Pack would come back to bite them in the butt, 3 years later. They actually released it as a single on their Come Out and Play album, and that didn't fare too well with longtime fans or whatever. It kind of helped to decline of their popularity in the 80s. And so the last bonus track is actually Shoot 'Em Down live at Reading. This is a live version at the Reading Festival. That's a very classic and famous live performance that Twisted Sister did back in '82. It actually helped them gain a lot more respect and a lot more popularity, especially because during that whole set, D. Snider actually stopped the music because there were people in the audience that was throwing stuff at them. And he actually challenged them to fight the band, to meet the band backstage. And he actually gained their respect. They actually went from throwing stuff at them to cheering them on and stuff of that nature. But they take the live version to Shoot 'Em Down and place it as a bonus track. My second favorite version of Shoot 'Em Down. I only have two favorite versions: the Under the Blade version and this version. But the live version is a very good one because they actually speed up the tempo, and the guitars, the riffs are a lot more heavier, so it almost comes off across as like a melodic speed metal track in a sense. But that ends the bonus tracks, man. But yes, man, Under the Blade by Twisted Sister. This is a great album. This is one of my favorite Twisted Sister albums. I listen to this album a lot. Usually when I get on a Twisted Sister kit, this is usually the first one I go for because it's just such a great record. Awesome debut. Anybody that's never heard this Twisted Sister, you definitely need to go check it out. Now there is like I said, there is another version that Atlantic Records put out, which was a remix version. It has a slightly different cover, but you should know it. It'll usually say when you look it up, it says Under the Blade Atlantic Records version or remix version. That version is kind of whack in my opinion because they overproduced the record. It's just too slick. It takes away a lot of the grit that this version, the original version, has. And there's also another version of the Armory Records reissue that comes with, I think, a couple of more discs. I think one disc is a live CD, which is the full Reading Festival performance, and then there's a DVD that has footage of that festival and I think some other content. But you can actually view that Reading Festival performance on Twisted Sister's official YouTube channel. But yes, that's it for this album review with Twisted Sister Under the Blade, man. I was really excited to talk about this record because Twisted Sister, one of my favorite metal bands, this being one of my favorite albums, so it was a no-brainer for me to go in and just really discuss each and every song, give a little brief history about it. And I urge any of you who haven't watched the We Are Twisted Effing Sister documentary to definitely go check it out because it's a great story. It really shows you how the obstacles that the band went through to get to the point of making this album and also having the later success that they would, man. Definitely go check out that documentary. But that's it for this video. I hope each and every one of you enjoyed this album review. And if you did like this album review, this video, do me a huge favor. Hit that thumbs up and give me a like because it does help the channel out a lot. Also, be sure to hit the subscribe button and tap that bell. That way you'll be notified whenever I drop new content. I want to give a huge thank you to everybody out there that has been watching my videos, that's been supporting the channel. I really appreciate it. And as always, hope everybody has a blessed day, a blessed week, and love, peace, and music. Peace out, y'all.